Israeli and Palestinian, are treated each year. Roughly 250 people who've been wounded during this conflict have arrived here for urgent medical care.
Behind these doors is the National Burn Unit. Inside here, there are 6 patients, 4 of which were airlifted here on Saturday after Hamas militants stormed their homes, their compounds, lighting them on fire, including Ella Golan. She's in the room right behind me, a mother with a 1.5-year-old baby who's currently fighting for her life.
The terrorists just decided to burn the place down.
Golan and her husband Ariel and their daughter Yael were in their home in Kfar Aza, a kibbutz near Gaza, which came under attack last Saturday morning when Ella Golan's brother Evi received a dire message.
He said, "Pray for us. We love you all." They're inside.
Hiding in their bomb shelter, the family of 3 refused to come out as militants called for them. The couple's priority, protect their baby.
Your brother-in-law and sister were shielding your niece to try and protect her.
Exactly. They both hugged her, and that's where you see the burn in their backs, in their hands.
They somehow managed to escape and were airlifted to this hospital, where all 3 have been intubated.
Seeing the baby, it was such a catastrophe. They've been cooked alive in that shelter.
During the darkest of days, humanity finds a way to shine through. Many businesses have closed their doors during the conflict, including florists. So a group of volunteers have been gathering at homes to assemble bouquets and wreaths to send them to hospitals and a growing number of funerals across the country.
Your hands are shaking as you make them.
Yeah.
This is therapeutic for you.
For me, it was the only way to survive these days.
As for the Golans, little Yael's condition is improving. Her parents remain in critical condition.
We are the lucky ones. The amount of carnage we are seeing here, it's unbelievable.
And yet, through all the trauma, remains a remarkable resilience. Sitting in the waiting room of the burn unit, we watched as a Jewish and Muslim family sat beside each other, sharing food. 2 cultures supporting each other during a time of grief while being torn apart by this war. John?
A powerful image. Adrian in Israel tonight. Thank you. The Prime Minister convened the Incident Response Group tonight to discuss the situation in the Middle East. One issue, how to get Canadians in Gaza out. Last night, we introduced you to one family with relatives trapped there. Tonight, we hear directly from one of those relatives stuck in the war zone. Here's CTV's Judy Choi.
Taking refuge from the bombs in Gaza are 150 Canadians. Among them, the Abu Wardra family from Mississauga. Mum Shireen brought her son Wasim and daughter Shanaz to visit their sick grandfather, who they haven't seen in 13 years. They arrived 2 days before Hamas attacked and are now trapped in northern Gaza with no power.
My whole family's scared. We can't sleep. We have to ration food, water, everything.
The southern border has been closed since Tuesday, but tomorrow a 5-hour window could open. Officials say they have some reassurances that foreign nationals and their families will be able to cross into Egypt.
This is communication that has been conveyed to our embassy in Cairo from the Egyptian government in coordination with the Israeli government.
But this isn't a done deal. Canadians are being asked not to move yet.
There are a number of security challenges at all the borders into Gaza. We know that there have been bombs at both borders in the last week.
Outside Gaza, in the past 2 days, Canada has flown out 500 people on evacuation flights. Today, the foreign minister met with some of them before they boarded. More airlifts are planned to help at least 1,300 Canadians still stranded in Israel. After it dropped off passengers in Athens, the military said it also helped transport Israelis back home.
Canadian Armed Forces has 2 planned flights, which will also include the transportation of approximately 30 Israeli citizens returning to Tel Aviv at the request of the State of Israel.
Global Affairs says there are also about 200 Canadians stuck in the West Bank who also need help getting out. Officials are working on a plan to transport them to Jordan by bus. John.
Okay, thank you, Judy. And in the West Bank, there has been more violence. Palestinian officials say 16 demonstrators supporting Gaza were killed today in clashes with Israeli forces. 50 people have now died there since Saturday's attack. The The conflict has also spilled over.
Police arrested 3 people after they allegedly made threats at this Jewish high school in Toronto.
The incitement to violence from Hamas, a recognized terrorist organization under Canadian law, obviously has no place in the conversation in Canada.
It prompted one of Montreal's major hospitals to encourage staff to cancel non-essential appointments.
Concerned community members, institutions looking for certainty in an uncertain world, and really living on this edge of between fear and anxiety that we're going to have to deal with long term in this community and throughout the Jewish world.
In the U.S., every major city is also on a heightened state of alert, with police cruisers and officers visibly stationed outside of schools and places of worship.
They're trying to generate fear, and so I think people dropping their kids off, they see a police officer, and it helps alleviate some of those concerns.
Police in Michigan have made an arrest in connection with an online threat against Palestinian Americans. Here at home, the National Council of Canadian Muslims says Islamophobic incidents have doubled in the past few days.
At the moment, officials in both the U.S. and Canada say there is no specific threat. John.
Okay, Vanessa, thank you. U.S. President Joe Biden today said the unfolding crisis in Gaza is a priority for his government. And America's National Security Council spokesperson told CTV's Question Period the U.S. is trying to negotiate a humanitarian corridor for aid and evacuation.
We are literally nonstop communicating with our Israeli counterparts and with our counterparts in Egypt to see if there's a way we can get some safe passage open. So for those who are in Gaza that want to leave, and a lot of them aren't going to want to leave, it's home, but for those who do, that they have a safe way to get out. It's just as important, quite frankly, that we continue to maintain some sort of corridor for humanitarian assistance to get in. The United States believes that the Palestinian people in Gaza, they're victims too.
You can see the full interview on CTV's Question Period this Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. The Supreme Court of Canada made a highly anticipated ruling today, finding the federal law for approving large-scale industrial projects violates the constitutional rights of provinces. The Alberta government has been quick to call the decision a win, but as CTV's Alberta Bureau Chief Bill Fortier reports, the victory may be largely a moral one.
Since 2019, Alberta has battled Ottawa over its Impact Assessment Act, a law that broadened the federal government's power to approve or reject large projects like oil sands mines. 4 years and one premier later, the province is celebrating a victory. The Supreme Court of Canada issued an advisory decision today, finding the act is, in part, unconstitutional, saying the scheme invites the federal government to make decisions in respect of projects that it has no jurisdiction to regulate.
These are substantial wins for the protection of provincial rights in our Constitution.
Alberta business leaders are optimistic the finding will result in more approvals and more investment.
We're hoping it's a signal that the pendulum is starting to swing back in terms of the desire of the public and policymakers to just restrict and end projects.
The top court found Ottawa does have the power to assess environmental impacts, but that the wording of the law needs to change to ensure Ottawa stays in its own jurisdictional lane.
We will now take this back and work quickly to improve the legislation through Parliament.
No, it's not the ruling that we were hoping for, but I also don't think it's a bombshell. What they're saying is that some amendments need to be made.
Alberta's premier believes the decision will have an immediate impact.
I think the court ruling is pretty clear today. We are open for business. We have the ability to approve projects, and we're going to approve them.
So technically a little different than saying, boom, that law no longer exists.
This expert says this was not a constitutional challenge, but what's known as a reference case. So the court's opinion only morally compels the government's next move.
That law is still on the books. It's just that the government now has steps to take to make it compliant with the Constitution of Canada.
And federal ministers hint those amendments could come quickly. It's not clear how fast, but the fall session still has 2 months remaining. John.
All right, Bill in Edmonton tonight. Thank you. Coming up, the NDP kicks off a 3-day huddle.
The reason why the cost of living has increased is because of corporate greed.
The pitches, the priorities, and the policies. Plus launch day for NASA's new heavy metal mission. Grassroots members of the NDP are gathering in Hamilton this weekend for a 3-day convention to forge future policies. The party wants to position itself as the change voters are looking for in the next federal election. But as Kevin Gallagher reports, supporters are split over the deal they've struck with the Liberals.